Good morning, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News for this Sunday, the 20th day of April, 2025. Two Israeli leaders were seemingly unable to persuade Witkoff of going down the present road with Iran. Hamas is recruiting 30,000 more fighters, while Turkey is helping with Gaza aid, and Russia-Ukraine have agreed to a 30-hour ceasefire because of Easter. However, our top story today comes from 2,000 years ago. And very simply, the Lord has risen. That's right, the Lord is risen indeed. Headline number one, Jesus Christ has risen from the dead. The most important day in human history took place 2,000 years ago when God the Son rose from the dead after dying for the sins of the world on Calvary's cross. No story ever has been or ever will be more important. So today, above all, let's remember this day of what it's all about. Jesus said in John 14:19, because I live, you will live also. And so today we celebrate the fact of a risen Christ. And of course, we have a spoiler alert here. The tomb was empty. All right. Anyway, in fact, we're going to a sunrise service right after this, so that's why I'm dressed this way. All right, let's go to the other headlines because things are going on. Not nearly as important, but they are important with respect to last day's Bible prophecy. All right. Headline number two, Barnea and Dermer seemingly unable to deter Witkoff from Iran nuclear strategy. There has been deep concern that the Trump administration does not understand the importance of the details setting back Iran's nuclear program. Remember, we talked about this yesterday. Mossad Director David Barnea and Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer were seemingly unable during a secret meeting on Friday in Paris to talk down U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff from the direction he has taken in the Iran nuclear negotiations, from the Jerusalem Post. Israel has been considering trying to intercept Witkoff on his way to the second round of Iran nuclear talks. It had been considering this, which took place yesterday, Saturday, in Rome. And Dermer is the closest advisor to Netanyahu, and Barnea has been seen as a secret weapon due to the deep respect both the Biden and Trump administrations have for the Mossad chief. The Jerusalem Post understands that Barnea recently had very successful meetings with CIA Director John Ratcliffe in Israel. But Jerusalem recognized that Witkoff is the man of the hour who the Jewish state would need to sway to impact negotiations. In Israel, there's been this deep concern, as we've been talking about, that neither Witkoff nor Trump completely understands the importance of the details regarding setting back Iran's nuclear program in the area of uranium enrichment, including advanced centrifuges, as well as regarding ballistic missile systems, which could be used to deliver such a nuclear weapon. Like we talked about, they're not even mentioning the ballistic missile systems at all. They seem to be clueless about this, that is, the Americans. Iran's optimistic reaction to the second round of talks, U.S. withholding of certain details, the scheduling of a third round of talks for next week, and other details suggest that Barnea and Dermer did not succeed, though Israel will hold out hope until a new mediocre deal is actually signed. In the past, Barnea and his predecessors, and they give the names Yossi Cohen, Tamir Pardo, Meir Dagan, and others, were sometimes used to sway top U.S. officials by presenting key, exceptional new intelligence about the dangers presented by Iran's nuclear program, and they did this at key moments in the past. Barnea has a very strong relationship with Ratcliffe's predecessor under Biden, Bill Burns, and was actually credited with convincing the then CIA chief to take some tougher stands on key details in nuclear negotiations with Iran in multiple situations, which led to the breakdown of negotiations with the Islamic Republic during the Biden administration. All right. The article goes on to talk about the Biden administration was trying to cut a quick deal with Iran in 2021, but they were intercepted by these Israeli leaders, and they talked a much tougher deal, and Iran didn't take it. They backed down. Anyway, despite these past successes with members of the American government, Witkoff and Trump seem intent on cutting a new nuclear deal with Tehran, provided they can present it as some way better than Obama's 2015 deal, even if it falls far short of what Israel believes is necessary. In lieu of a deal that essentially shuts down Iran's nuclear program, most Israeli officials prefer to exploit the current unique window of vulnerability for Iran with the time to attack its facilities. You've got an open window now, right? Attack. This follows the Air Force disabling Iran's best anti-aircraft system in October 2024, which we've talked about, as well as the crushing of much of Hezbollah and Hamas's power to retaliate against Israel for a strike on Tehran. So, in other words, the stage is perfectly set for an Israeli-U.S. strike to throw back Iran's program for years and years. It really would maybe not totally destroy because they do have the knowledge, but at least throw it back for years if they destroyed, some of the main underground facilities there. And yet, it seems Donald Trump and Witkoff are bent on coming up with some kind of deal and not doing this military attack when they have the chance. And this is what is frustrating Israel. We'll keep an eye on this. Let me just put it this way. Biblically speaking, if Israel has the chance to do this and with the U.S. and the U.S. refuses and does a bad deal, a lousy deal for the U.S., let me warn you, this is going to be bad for the United States of America because Genesis 12, 1-3 is still in the Bible. Those that bless Israel will be blessed. Those that curse them will be cursed. And by not helping out Israel at this particular time, let me tell you, United States is in for some trouble, and that's just what the Bible teaches and history tells us, one story after another, that this is true. So let's hope this doesn't occur. We just don't know. Please pray. All right, headline number 3, Hamas is recruiting 30,000 fighters in Gaza as it shifts to guerrilla warfare. Sources say the terror group recruitment drive is aimed at recouping massive manpower losses, with many of the recruits lacking in training in traditional warfare. Hamas has launched this mass recruitment campaign in the Gaza Strip and had to shift to guerrilla warfare as it's had heavy losses and limited success with limited resources with Israel, according to a Saudi media report. The Saudi-owned Al-Hadaf network, citing unnamed sources, reported that the Iz al-Din al-Qassam brigades, Hamas's armed wing, is recruiting as many as 30,000 fighters. Report says the move is part of a new military strategy relying on guerrilla tactics, as most of the new recruits are not trained in conventional combat, and they've suffered substantial losses to their weapons arsenal, particularly drones and long-range rockets. Now, here's the bottom line of all this. As we've said, Hamas is going to keep fighting to the very end. They're not going to make any type of ceasefire agreement. They're not going to release any hostages. They're going to keep on fighting and fighting and fighting until they run out of weapons. They run out of, cannon fodder for these people that are basically going to be wiped out because they're not trained. And it's sad for the people of Gaza and the ones that have signed up for this. However, this is who these people are. They're bent on destroying the nation of Israel. That is in their charter. And so we expect to see more and more of this. So in other words, the war is going to drag on. So keep praying for Israel. Hamas is reportedly facing a severe financial crisis. They're not able to pay their people. The place is in a real mess, the whole situation in Gaza. And yet still they're going to recruit fighters and fight Israel as long as they can. It's sad, but it shows the supernatural evil spirit that's leading these individuals to try and to destroy God's work amongst the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, speaking of that, headline number 4, Turkish Spy Chief talks Gaza aid with Hamas leaders. Here, Turkey hits the headlines again. And what they're doing, they're advertised the meeting in a statement that accused Israel of genocidal acts. In other words, because Israel's committing genocide with the people of Gaza, what we have to do is give them aid. In other words, aid Hamas is what they're up to. The spy agency said two of the top leaders, they met one of the top leaders of Hamas and their top spy agency person. His name's Ibrahim Kulan. He's the director of Turkey's national intelligence. He met with Hamas officials Saturday to discuss delivering aid to Gaza because of the genocidal activities. And Turkey has made this statement. It would continue or always stand by the people of Gaza who have shown great determination and patience to protect their lands. What a joke. It's not their lands, it's Israel's land. Despite Israeli attacks targeting civilians and hunger policies implemented to displace the people. Again, they've never targeted civilians. They go out of their way not to, and they bring food in, more food than the Gazans ever have had every day in these trucks, but Hamas intercepts it and doesn't allow the people to eat. So anyway, Turkey is really on the dark side here, and we know they will be part of the last days invasion, according to Ezekiel 38:39. That will be led by Russia. And so Turkey is showing the ugly face that it has right now with Hamas supporting them and trying to keep them kicking and going In other words, again, the supernatural desire to keep attacking Israel, to destroy it. Now we know at sign 21 of our 25 signs when near the end, Israel will be isolated, Israel will be hated, Israel will be attacked at the end of the age, and there'll be nobody actually, according to Zechariah, at the right before the second coming of Christ, nobody that stands with him. It talks about the regional nations as well as the whole world being against them, and that's where we're moving to right now. And so it's sad. But this is what we see. Now, again, for information on what's going to take place, we have our website, Educating Our World, which has 12 books on Bible prophecy. They're all free downloads. Please take advantage of them, including the book we just mentioned, 25 Signs. We're near the end. This will give you a complete, thorough explanation of what's going to take place in the future from God's perspective. Now, in the meantime, we don't know how we're going to get there, as we always say, but we know we're going to get there. Now, the last story is really fascinating. I saved this one to last. Ukraine agrees to Putin's Easter troop, but Zelensky says he cannot be trusted. Russian President Vladimir Putin announced Saturday that he has ordered his forces to stop all military activity in Ukraine, declaring an Easter truce out of humanitarian considerations until the end of Sunday. Putin said all hostilities would halt between 6 p.m. Moscow time on Saturday, that's 11 a.m. Eastern time, and midnight on Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern time, Sunday. That's 2 p.m. our time here in the West Coast, saying we assume that the Ukrainian side will follow our example. The truce, if held, will be a total of 30 hours. Now, why is this happening? Here's what's fascinating. Both countries have majority Orthodox Christian populations, and then in the Orthodox tradition, Pascha or Pascha or Easter services in churches begin around midnight and continue for several hours, followed by more celebrations later into Sunday. Ukrainian President Zelensky signaled willingness to abide by the Easter truce, but quickly accused Moscow of already violating it. If Russia is now suddenly ready to truly engage in a format of full and unconditional silence, Ukraine will act accordingly, mirroring Russia's actions, he said. Isn't that fascinating? They both have majority Orthodox Christian populations, and so they're going to take a break 30 hours for Easter. Well, we'll see if that comes true. All right, it is Easter Sunday again. Let's not forget it. I'm sure each of you will be at some service today, either sunrise like we're going to or whatever else, and just have a blessed day. Later on Your Bible Questions Answer, we'll talk about what happened on Easter Sunday, and then later, much later in the day, we'll do another edition of Breaking News. So and as we wait for that, as we go to the services, as we think about the Lord today, remember, the Lord has risen. The Lord has risen indeed. I'm Don Stewart. May the Lord, who is risen, richly bless you.